We have lost our dynamic speaker today. She has to go to Vietnam on Saturday, I believe. She takes off. And I don't know what that's going to do to the speaking department here. But we still have a lot of things to do besides the speaking department. The early morning watch is very important. Fellowship at the table is important. And the creative arts important. And the singing is unusually important in the camp. The prayer groups are just tops in a CFO camp. So there are a lot of things to do. One of the main things we want to do is to go out with Alice and have rhythm. I can't take it. And I feel most reluctant about that. But Alice understands why. And so she forgives me for not being able to join her. Speaking about the speaking department, I have an awkward habit of saying yes to certain invitations when I mean no. I was out with my old friend James Kraft, who's passed on now, in his office building in Chicago. And he had about 12 of his executives there and gave us a great cheese luncheon. Everything was cheese, made up in all sorts of different fashions. And he had me autograph my book, Love Can Open Prison Doors, for these executives. And I could hardly sign my name. I was overwhelmed. And then he asked me if I would speak in the university, and it's very difficult to say no after all this. So I said yes, and then suffered emotionally for about 36 hours, waiting to go on. And I got there, and the church was an enormous mausoleum type of thing. It had a backdrop about a half a block long. And I think, if I remember right, the pulpit was made out of stone. And I believe there was a little stone seat behind it. The audience was way out there, and I was between the devil and the deep blue sea. I got over there in fear and trembling, and the man who was to introduce me and show me around found me. And I talked to him. I asked him what he thought I ought to talk about. And I wanted to talk about a minute. And he said, well, there will be an authority out there in your congregation this morning on every subject under the sun. So he said, if I were you, I would speak about God. There will be no authority there. I said, you mean the faculty is coming too? Yes, all the faculty. And the students, yes. It's almost a captive audience. I said, what do you do here? He said, I'm the dean in the Department of Public Speaking. Well, if that didn't finish it for me. And I got up there, and he introduced me. He said, it only took him about a second or two. He said, I don't know this man. But he's going to address us. Oh, my. I didn't know what to do, and I prayed, or tried to. And the only thing I could think of was to give them a testimony. And I did. And I started my testimony and got all hooked up and in connection with the Lord. All the fear and trembling left and all the emotions. And I became greatly inspired. After that meeting was over, there were 16 of the students and 2 professors gathered with me in one of the rooms over in another building. And we had a wonderful after meeting. And I think 2 or 3 of those students were persuaded. And I believe one of the professors was greatly persuaded. So, there's always something comes out of a bad situation. If you go ahead and say yes, and then just like a blind dog in the meat house, just go to it. Just go ahead in spite of everything. And he gives the power to overcome. Someone asked me if I believed in the devil here. I think he's around. I can feel Lucifer standing off here to my left, watching everything I do and everything I say. So I guess I have to be kind of careful. What do you do about the devil? Well, he doesn't have a long tail anymore. He doesn't have horns. He's likely to be pretty well dressed sometimes in a tuxedo or a business suit, or he's likely to be shabbily, poorly dressed. We personalize the devil. Every time we obey him and do what he wants us to do, we personalize the devil. No matter what kind of a negative, destructive thing it is that we engage in, that's his work. I believe he's around, but I have no faith in him. And I know, too, one thing good that he does that Brother Rufus Mosley told me about. He said the devil is always kicking us into the kingdom, and the Lord is always wooing us into the kingdom, so we ought to get there. He also said that the devil is always voting against us, and Jesus is always voting for us, and how we vote carries the election. Yes, he's around. On the 2nd of March, 1st of March, 1930, I was getting ready to leave the penitentiary, and there was a man who worked in the department or the office of identification in that prison who was an atheist and a very brilliant man. He had 2 university degrees, and he was amazingly keen and capable of stealing the faith away from those impressionable young inmates who were coming into the institution for the first time. He was the first one who really got a hold of them, because every one of them that came in, they had to pass through his department to be fingerprinted and mugged, and he got in his licks on them right there. He was a missionary for the devil. And the day before I was to leave, I was working on the night shift in the hospital. The day before I was to leave, he came over to tell me how difficult it would be for me to make good. And we sat in the convalescent room that afternoon, and he talked. And I found out how to overcome the devil. The devil can't stand to be laughed at. His vanity just simply burns him up. And he can't stand disinterest. We should never have any interest at all in any person who is being used by the devil to discourage or hurt someone. Be disinterested in what is being poured through that person, but love that person enormously and have great pity and great compassion on the person who is being used. So he told me that I didn't have a chance. He said, you will go out of here tomorrow morning, and there's a great depression on in the United States, and probably over half the people in the United States are unemployed. And he said these people are people of skill and talent, ability and trade. And you have no talent, you have no trade, you have no profession, you've never worked, you've never earned honest money. And you're going out there and try to compete in the labor market with all these unemployed people. You have lived in this place for 6 years, just like in a prenatal state or a chicken and an egg that's never been hatched. This state has taken care of you for 6 years. They have stripped you of every responsibility and every obligation. There isn't a thing that you have had to pay for in this place. You've been sheltered, you've been fed, you've been clothed. Even your laundry has been done for you. You've had no barber bills to pay even. You get a haircut every 3 months and a shave once a week, and you don't even have to pay for it. They have a shower bath over there that you can go to once a week. All these years you've been living like that and having no obligations. No one has ever called upon you to pay taxes. No one has ever called upon you for a contribution to some worthy cause. You have not had to enter into any civic responsibilities that people have to enter into outside and take part in these things. You've been absolutely free from everything that you will be up against when you go into the outside world. Not only that, he said, when you leave here, you will not have a friend in the world. Not one. The only friends that you have will be left behind you here. But when you go out there, there will be no friends to help you. And when you go out of here, you will go out in a suit that is made mostly out of burlap cloth. And you will have a prison-made hat that has no existence anywhere in the outside world. You will have a pair of prison-made shoes on, and you will have a $10 bill. And you're going to face the world with this suit, this hat, and these shoes, and with a background behind you of 25 years of prison and criminality. You have nothing in the world, he told me, but a black, bleak, dreary, criminal record. That's all you've got to recommend you. And you will go out of here with that. And you will face all the responsibilities of living in an open society. All your life you've been antisocial. You've never been able to fraternize with anyone except your own kind. And you'll be called upon now to associate with other people. And he said you can't do it. Just as soon, he said, as the first rain comes and that suit shrinks up, pants legs get up over your shoe tops, coat sleeves come up halfway to your elbows, and that hat just fades away, and you can't get any work. You'll make a few efforts. You'll try. You'll go around somewhere and look at the paper and see if there's any employment. And you will make a few dabs at trying to find a job, and there won't be any. Then he said you'll get hungry. And you've lived a life in the underworld that does not beg. The life you've lived in the underworld is independent. It's based upon having lots of money and being utterly independent of penury and poverty. Of course, that's the type of life I lived in the underworld. I belonged to that society that's known as Yeggman. We were bank burglars, and we didn't piddle around with small money. He said you would not beg. It would cut you to the quick to try to beg somebody for something to eat. Well, he painted a very gloomy picture. And when he got through, I asked him if he had finished. He said there's a lot more I could say. And I laughed heartily. And I didn't intend to. All that he had told me just simply tickled my tickle bone. And I just laughed, and I looked at him, and he looked like chalk in the face. The blood had just drained out of him. The devil he cannot stand laughter. If you laugh at him or if you ridicule him, he just simply cannot stand it. Well, I went out the next morning, a beautiful morning on the 2nd day of March, 36 years ago. And I had the suit, the burlap suit. I had my $10, my shoes and my hat. And I went out into that great big world, not a friend in it anywhere, except one. And I went down on the river bank, and I looked over into the other state. And I talked to Jesus. He had met me in solitary confinement in that prison 4 years before. And he had been with me and talking with me, and I'd been talking with him ever since. He had been with me in that hospital, running those wards every night, 12 hours. And he had shown me many times how miracles could be performed with these sick inmates who were frightened about death. Well, I talked with him down there on the river bank, and there came into my mind a statement out of St. Paul's Gospel. It's the way Jesus spoke to me. And that statement was, and it's been very important in my life ever since, you don't have to look for a job. You don't have to have any trade. You don't have to have any profession. There's only one thing that you have to do, and that's to walk in love by faith. And that was my answer. The second answer was, you know what you want, and then you know why you want it, and it will be done unto you by faith. Well, I remembered down in old Mexico one time, just across the border from El Paso. I'd been drinking there for about 8 weeks. Got cheap tequila whiskey, about all they had there. And I became very ill, on the verge of delirium tremens. And I didn't hardly know what to do about it. I staggered up the bank of the Colorado River, along the bank of the Colorado River, and I came to an adobe shack. And at the door of that adobe shack, I collapsed, fainted. When I came to, I was on the inside of the adobe shack. It was very poorly appointed. There wasn't any appointments in it, in fact. And there was a lady there, probably 60, a Mexican peasant woman. And her bed was made out of boards and some leaves and sacks as a mattress. And there was a sack that had leaves or something in it as a pillow. And a little bit of beauty was over the foot of the bed when I woke up. There was a shelf there and a few emblems up there, Catholic emblems. She was a Catholic lady. And she had a few of these Catholic emblems up there. And there was a picture of St. Jude up on that shelf. He's the miracle worker, miracle working saint of the Catholic faith. And she had this scarf tacked along the bottom of, the only bit of beauty in the place. She had taken this cheesecloth and had found some berries or something and had dyed that. And this was tacked up. I believe it was a kind of a reddish color. And when I came to, she was kneeling beside that very crude bed. And she had her hands like this, and she was looking steadfastly at that picture of St. Jude, and her lips were moving in prayer for me. Now, there's very little doubt that I had pneumonia, and probably double pneumonia. I was in a very bad shape, and on the verge of delirium tremens. And when her prayer was finished, I was healed. I was healed of all that weakness, all of the terrible results of all that drinking for 8 weeks. And I was healed of whatever it was in my lung area that had been choking me. And I went out from that dear soul, and I rendered my health to the devil. I didn't render it to God. I went right straight back down into Juarez, and I began to drink again. And for 20 years, I rendered that health that she had achieved through God. I rendered it to the devil. And as a result of that, every organ in my body became disintegrated and diseased. Then there came a time when I had my opportunity, while working there on the night shift of that hospital, For one night I came on duty and there was a young Mexican lad in bed. I saw immediately that he was about my age when I was down there in Juarez, Mexico. They had brought him into the hospital for one thing, and they were later to find out that the thing they thought was the matter with him was not the matter with him. Or later he was operated upon for appendicitis, and what he really had was tuberculosis of the bowels. And they sewed him up and put him to bed to die. When I first saw him, my mind flashed back across those years and across the space. And I